This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And listen, we all know what happened on Saturday night. I think there's a lot to talk about on the show. It's just going to be Shane and me here. We have a lot to break down, from Tommy Lloyd's contract extension to what happened on Saturday. I will just say this. Number one, what a season. What a ride. And how much fun before that game on Saturday did we all have. Amazing. Can't take anything away from that. And number two, I want to remind you guys of something. We are an opinion show. We are giving our opinion. We're not trying to break news. There are other podcasts that are way better with that. We are an opinion show, and therefore our opinions are worth as much as what you're paying for them, which presumably is $0. Shane.
Especially our predictions. Although you were on a roll on, as you just noted on X, on CBS Sportsline, you were their number one picker in the NCAA tournament, were you not?
I was their number one picker to end the season. I went 28-12 in my last 40 picks.
Nicely
so
done.
I had a great run. I'm very proud of that, but it would have been nice if we'd capped that off with a national title. We're recording this right after Michigan just beat UConn, and I have to say it's a little depressing. I think a lot of Arizona fans, probably you, Shane, feel the same way, that we thought a week ago that this would be us.
Yeah, well, and I sort of changed my pick, and I picked Arizona last week because I figured why the heck not, even though I really had no idea how that game was going to go. But I don't know if I ever really believed it, just because it just the idea of Arizona winning another national championship just kind of seems surreal, even though it was completely within their grasp. I think the frustrating thing is that, we've lamented for so many years how much bad luck Arizona's had in the NCAA tournament. And I think they had some bad luck again this year. Even though they finally got back to the Final Four, they had a tough road just to get there. And then I think like 6 or 7 out of every 10 years, Arizona would have been the best team in the Final Four. 6 or 7 of those 10 years. And in a couple of those, the other years, Arizona would be on par maybe with one other team. But 1 out of 10 years, you face a team like Michigan. And we'll get into that a little bit more. I think I'll just say to start off, I think the game was on Saturday night was a little bit more about Michigan being very good than Arizona being not very good. But we'll dive into that a little more. And as we talked about before we started recording, Eric, you and I shouldn't be watching basketball games together anytime soon. They just don't win when we watch together. They lost 3 games all season, and 2 of them we were watching it together. I appreciate the invite to the backyard in Phoenix, but it was rough. And then, of course, the other game we went to was Texas Tech earlier this year. So.
Yeah, and all right, so fine. But there was somebody, I don't remember who it was, on X, who's like, they lost because Shane picked Arizona. Give me a break. Like, seriously.
Oh, I can't win with some people.
But
People
yeah,
get mad at me for
I mean,
people get mad at me for picking. I didn't even see that. I don't care. People get mad at me for picking against them. People get mad at me for picking them. I don't, whatever. You can't please everyone, and we're not here to please everyone, Eric.
I understand that. It just, Shane's pick had nothing to do with the result of the game. Arizona just didn't play very well. All right, let's
Shane's just not good at picking. That's what it is.
Let's get into buy or sell, Shane. Let's just start with number one. The moment was too big.
I'm gonna sell that one for the most part. I said last week, and what we saw on Saturday reaffirmed it. When they play their best, Michigan is the best team in college basketball this season, or was, now that the season's over. They didn't play their best against UConn. They won anyway because they're just that much better. Arizona was more consistent throughout the season, but Michigan had more peaks and valleys, and they had more blowout wins for that reason. But the team that Arizona played on Saturday night was the team that beat Gonzaga by 40 points in non-conference, and the team that ran roughshod over everyone they played in the tournament to get to the Final Four, even without their best player for most of the game on Saturday. I think the key point in the game was Michigan took a big lead the first few minutes. They went up like 10-1 to start the game.
Game was
We
over at that point, in my opinion.
well here let me keep going. We've seen that before. We most recently against Iowa State in the Big 12 tournament. Iowa State went up like 14-2 early. Arizona came all the way back, obviously, and won the game. But even against Michigan, Arizona battled back, settled down a little bit. It seemed, cut the lead to 4 points. The like 7 or 8 minutes left before halftime, and at that point, I was thinking. I think a lot of fans, maybe not you, but a lot of fans were thinking, okay, game on. This is the kind of competitive game we expected, and everything's kind of settling in. But less than 2 minutes after that, Michigan was up by double digits again. And that is something that hadn't happened to Arizona all season. The Cats rallied and Michigan just sort of slapped them away. Like that's nice, but no. And as confident as this team has been all season, as much as Tommy Lloyd reminds them to live in the moment, that sequence, I think, couldn't help shake up the team a little bit. Like, uh-oh, this feels different. And then their leader, Jaden Bradley, he picks up 3 early fouls. And that at that point, I think it was game over. So was the moment too big? I don't know if I agree with that because this team has faced more pressure than just about any team in recent memory for Arizona just to get to the Final Four. I just think that sometimes it's about the other team a little bit more. I think this was about Michigan playing one of its best games of the season. If the Michigan we saw was the one that showed up against UConn, Arizona could have won. But again, luck of the draw. Arizona, I think, with more, I guess you could call it bad luck in that regard, just bad timing. And Michigan was just a team on a mission on Saturday night.
So I'm going to buy this one, Shane, and I'm going to say that the moment was too big. I think they panicked, and that's where they got off to the bad start, and they just didn't know what to do. And I think that is where the moment got him. I think Tommy Lloyd got flustered. I think the players got flustered, and it just was what it was. So I think if that's a normal game, it's they could battle back. But I think the fact they were in the Final Four, I think and they're like, oh God, we're playing the great Michigan team. And Michigan, I said it at 10-1. I told you, I said this team looks outclassed. That was the word that I used, outclassed.
But again, Arizona came back. They cut the lead to 4 points, and we've seen that before. Arizona gets punched. Even hell, against Colorado at Colorado, the last game of the regular season, they were down double digits in the first half. There was no panic. They came back, and this game they came back too. But then Michigan just swatted them away again. Again, that is something Arizona had to experience, and I think at that point, it just felt different. It felt different watching the game. I'm sure it felt different on the court. It was something Arizona had not experienced, just being pushed aside like that twice. Arizona's made these rallies that kind of demoralized teams, in Michigan was just like, nah, not today. Even without their best player going out early in the game, foul trouble, then an injury, they still were able to do that. They were hitting threes as well. Again, that's kind of hit and miss. They didn't hit, but 2 of 15 against UConn, of course, or whatever.
Horrible.
It was, 2
Of
of
course,
16.
figures, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
figures.
of course.
Yeah.
So they weren't hot from 3. Maybe it's a little different, but yeah, Michigan was that was the team that beat up every team going into the Final Four. That was a team that beat Gonzaga by 40 and Auburn by 40. It was just that was a team where Arizona ran into, and so maybe a little, I don't want to say panic, but just maybe a little bit of doubt crept into Arizona for the first time this season because Michigan just was that good.
All right. So we had Fran Fraschilla on the show. We've had him a bunch of times, 4 or 5 times. And he talked about a few times ago the 25-5-5 theory, which is 25 games you're going to play your normal game. 5 games you're going to play better, where you can beat anybody, and 5 games you're going to play worse, where you're going to get beaten. I feel like on Saturday, Michigan played one of those 5 of their best, and Arizona played one of the 5 of their worst. Would you say that's accurate?
Maybe, but I think they kind of go together. It wasn't a coincidence they both happened at the same time. I think Michigan had a lot to do with Arizona playing one of its 5 worst. They were just, and some of it, I don't want to say it's luck again, but some of the shots under the basket that Arizona had made all season, Koa Pete and Tobe Awaka and Mo Rivers, they just weren't going in. And Michigan's defense had a little something to do with that, but they were shot, some very, very close in shots that went in almost all season. And I think that kind of, combined to have Arizona thinking this just unfortunately feels different. Ivan Karchenkov in particular just did not look very good. He turned the ball over a lot early in the game. And the big statistic, there are a lot of stats you can point to, but the biggest one in my mind, Michigan turned the ball over 13 times. Arizona turned it over 14 times. So that was pretty even. Points off turnovers plus 14 Michigan, 26-12. That was the difference in the game. Michigan punished Arizona for its mistakes. Arizona was not able to do the same, and that was pretty close to the final margin in the game.
I think the three-point shooting also, I mean, Michigan was what, almost 50% from three-point range. But I just feel like Arizona played arguably, and you're right, they did correlate together. I thought Michigan played way better than they had. I mean, and than they had, in certain games that I'd seen them this season. They played great against Tennessee, but I don't think Tennessee was that great. Michigan rose to the moment against Arizona, and I thought Arizona, just kind of wilted.
Yeah.
With that said, so that's, Fran's theory, unfortunately, happened at the wrong time for Arizona. But we made the freaking Final Four.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this again and again on this show. I understand that you're probably sitting here in general, whoever you are listening to the show, and thank you for doing so. I assume you're frustrated about the result. We all are. But I mean, that season was so much fun. They were 36-3. And you know what? If Arizona had lost in the first round and had played one of those five worst games of the season in the first round, we would have been beside ourselves in misery on this show. But you know what? It was so great, the ride. And the camaraderie of if you were in Indianapolis or you were in Phoenix, Tucson, wherever you were watching the game by yourself or with friends, we all were able to share in this together in some capacity. And that's what's so great about this run. And that's what I'll miss most about it.
Agreed. And, Eric, Arizona got to cut the Nets down 3 times this season. They were regular season conference champions in the Big 12, arguably the best conference in the country, along with the Big 10. And then they were Big 12 tournament champions in a tournament they didn't have to get the win to get a 1 seed. And then they got all the way to the Final Four. There are teams that go on to win national titles that don't get to cut the Nets down 3 times in a season. I'm not saying I'd rather, it's better than obviously what Michigan did. I'm just saying that was an absolute privilege to watch this team for the last several months. And I mean, in terms of luck, it did even out a little bit because they were healthy at the right time, where a lot of Big 12 teams weren't. So I'll consider that as well. But I think, the further away we get from the disappointment on Saturday, the more we'll just be able to appreciate the great season that was. And one silver lining, a very thin silver lining for me, is at least we didn't lose on a crazy last second shot. And then we're thinking, what if the rest of our lives? I mean, it was a decisive loss, which is not great. It's disappointing because there were so many impartial college basketball fans excited for this game. It was hyped up as the game of the decade. And then it just ends up being a dud, and Arizona's on the short end of it. So that kind of stinks on a national stage. But yeah, big picture, getting back to the Final Four, and so much credit to these players because they had to hear us talk about it's been so long since you gotten back to the Final Four. You have to get back there, and they navigated that pressure so well, and to overcome that. And overcome all that chatter and overcome a halftime deficit in the Elite Eight, where all of us fans, including myself, are thinking, here we go again. This team accomplished amazing things. It'll just take it probably, like you said, a few more days, maybe a couple more weeks for us to fully appreciate that.
It's just by the end of the game, Shane, I don't know, you left where we were watching earlier. I just wasn't even mad. I was just like, it was what it was. It was just Arizona just ran into a buzzsaw, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably in the minority with that thinking, but I just wasn't. I was like, all right. I mean, this team had a great year. I don't know. Maybe I was just kind of delusional with that take. Maybe a lot of you may disagree with that. All right. What lessons can Tommy take from this, Shane? Like Dusty May. This is a really good thing that Dusty May did. He set up a court in the big house.
Yeah,
in
saw
Michigan.
that. Yeah.
And he had the players practice on depth perception. And it was, I mean, that's genius.
Yeah.
Now there are things about having too many freshmen, having 3 freshmen in the starting lineup. That's a thing. We've seen that obviously with Duke having their issues before. What would you take away, and what do you think Tommy should take away from this?
I don't know that there is a lot to take away other than they just got beat by a really good team. But if you're trying to come up with some other stuff, and Tommy's still learning, this was his first Final Four as a head coach. He'd been twice as an assistant, but this was his first experience as a head coach, and I'm sure he'll learn from it. But yeah, I really like what Dusty May did. It kind of reminded me of the scene in Hoosiers where they measure the the length from the floor to the hoops. Like it's still 10 feet, even though they're playing in a bigger arena. Yeah, that was I mean, it was a great way, not only in terms of depth perception, but to just kind of get them, big feel. It's like it's still basketball court. Dimensions are still the same. So yeah, maybe that's something that he could have done, but that was a very smart thing that Dusty May did. And then yeah, I think that having the three freshman starters wasn't a big deal most of the year, but maybe it was in this game. And Michigan had more senior leadership. I don't know. That's always didn't. I mean, with Purdue, it didn't matter. Purdue had the same thing, and Arizona beat them. But Michigan was just a better team. Even though Purdue beat them in the Big Ten tournament, Michigan was the better team overall. So I don't know if I take too much from it, other than and I know we'll talk about the lead up to him getting a contract extension at Arizona. I don't know if that was distracting, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I sometimes I think I hate going back to this, but sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes a team is just better than you, and I think that's what happened against Michigan.
That's exactly what happened. All right. I would agree with this. I think the whole thing about too many freshmen, whatever, this team won 36 games this season.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really nitpick. They went on the road. They won at UConn. They won at Houston. I mean, they won at BYU.
They beat Houston twice. They beat Iowa State twice. They beat
Right,
UConn. They beat Florida. I mean, what? Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, you'll never have a better regular season in Arizona basketball history. Like this will never be topped.
That was one of the best regular seasons in recent college basketball memory. Absolutely.
Yeah. But Michigan is also an all-time team. I think Michigan is probably one of the best teams we've seen in the last 30 years, if not
bad timing. Again, bad timing.
I think this Michigan team, when it's all said and done, will go down with the UNLV teams as how good they were. Unfortunately, Arizona just, worked out, didn't work out that way. All right. Yep. So the other big news that happened was Tommy Lloyd getting a contract extension. And there's a lot of angles to break down from this.
Yeah.
I just want to start by saying this. There were clips, you clipped your rant from last week, and that went kind of viral, which was awesome. I thought it was one of your best moments ever, probably your best on the show. I thought it was fantastic. There were some people that gave us some heat for it. It was an opinion. It was an opinion. Wow. And we are entitled to our opinions. Now, with that said, we also heard from different people who confirmed that some of the things that Shane said, and I'm going to leave it at that certain people reached out and confirmed that Shane was on target with his rant. And I'll just leave it at that.
Well, and it's not just a matter of opinion. I mean, this was like I think we provide like analysis based on what we know, right? And as far as the Tommy Lloyd situation, first of all, I reject the idea that this was a distraction for the team and this is what cost them the game. Maybe it was a bit of a distraction, but I don't think it mattered in the game. I think Michigan was just better. But
yeah,
as far as the not only the contract extension, but part of the clause where Tommy Lloyd does not have to report to Desiree Reed-Francois anymore, and he's going to instead report directly to Dr. Garamella. And kudos to Dr. Garamella for getting this deal done and for whatever role he played. Outstanding work. And it is crazy to think, but there is a good possibility that if that win over Purdue was substantial for the program, not just for this season, but for seasons to come. And we'll just leave it at that. Go ahead, Eric.
Let me say this. If the one who gave the best info on this, Jason Shearer and Shelby did a podcast on Sunday night. If you want the scoop there, I thought Jason broke it down very well. And I trust based on what he said, I had heard similar things from other people. But obviously the stuff like Shane, we said things on the show that there was an ultimatum given where Tommy Lloyd said, I'm not going to report to her anymore. I had that confirmed by like 4 different people who knew, not just, a message board. Like I had 4 different people reach out and confirm that. We're not gonna break news on this show. We're not gonna just fabricate things just to say stuff.
I think the one mistake I made last week was I called them rumors. Well, they're not really. I mean, these are
they weren't rumors. They were true.
Yeah.
They were true.
And between the detail that Tommy Lloyd won't have to report to her and other things we learned directly from people in the know since last week's show. Our takes have, I mean, our positioning and the way we frame the issue has been validated and then some. Okay.
Yes.
I think, and I'll just talk a little bit more about the situation with Desiree Reed-Francois. I think what happens, unfortunately, is people like Desiree, who are very numbers driven and are able to get the kinds of deals done that she has. And again, fantastic job on her part. They're also the same kind of people who might have a difficult time hitting that off switch and changing up their tactics when they deal with people and their organization they depend on. A lot of people have left U of A athletics since she took over, and not all of them, but some of them have left because some left because they had better opportunities elsewhere. Others have left because directly because of her. I'll just leave it at that. That's just a fact. We know that. Okay, it's not an opinion; it's a fact.
That has been confirmed.
Yes. So, and then just regarding her situation going forward, I think the question is how much confidence are boosters going to have in her after she conceded her supervision of Tommy Lloyd. During her career, she hasn't been in the same spot more than 5 years at any one time. And I think we have a pretty good idea of why. She comes in, does some good stuff financially, and rubs people the wrong way, probably, and then heads,
Yep.
yeah, oh yeah, gosh. And then I'll also give her credit for the listening to the fans and the new court design at McHale Center. It's beautiful, absolutely. I love we're incorporating the cactus logo. She did a lot of good stuff, but I wouldn't be shocked, and we've seen this as well. I wouldn't be shocked if we see her move on pretty soon. Not a firing per se, but a transition, you'd call it. But again, I applaud Dr. Garamella for helping to get this deal done with Tommy Lloyd. Massive. I mean, we've learned since, and I mean, I guess should have known this already, but Tommy Lloyd's whole family pretty much lives in the Tucson area. So just the idea that he would uproot his whole family because he can't get along with the AD, I think tells you just how challenging a situation that is for him. And I'm glad that Dr. Garamella was able to get a workaround done.
My take on DRF is this: she's done an excellent job from the financial point of view to get the sponsorships and such. I would be shocked, and once again, I don't have any inside info with this. I would be shocked if she is here on opening day for the football team in September. When you are the AD at Arizona, basketball is number one. I mean, football is the revenue generator just because you can put more people in the stadium, but basketball is number one. And when basketball is no longer on your plate, other things will follow. A mutual parting of the ways seems likely.
Yeah.
And I don't, I wish there was a way that everybody could coexist and get along, but for whatever reason, they can't. That we're not going to get into that, stuff. You can, listen and find other places to explain that. It's a shame, but I think she's done. I would be shocked.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if she's there on opening night.
And the last thing I'll say about the situation for now is I think it's unfortunate because again we know that people and a good amount of people have left because they just don't gel with her. And I think it's unfortunate that it took someone as prominent as Tommy Lloyd, the most popular coach on campus and the most well-paid coach or I think most well-paid public employee in the state, to have not a public falling out, but a reported certainly falling out to get these wheels in motion. I wish that it hadn't come to this, but because again, like a lot of times in other businesses, other companies, you have to piss off the wrong person before action's taken. And so again, it's difficult because part of me feels bad about it. It's like, oh, thanks for fixing our budget problems and get out of here. I don't like looking at it like that, but it obviously something has to change, and there's a good chance it's going to change pretty soon.
So, okay. That is the end of that. And that's all we're going to say about that. But
yep.
Tommy Lloyd staying. It sounds as though, and you referred to it earlier, Shane, that Tommy Lloyd had Arizona lost to Purdue based on your understanding, based on things that are out there, um, in your opinion, do you think Tommy Lloyd would be the coach of Arizona today had they lost to Purdue?
It's crazy because you don't want to think that one game could alter the history of a program, but I think it's certainly it seems more likely than not. Not only because of certain conversations that took place during Final Four week. All of a sudden it's like, the fan base has gone from you got to keep Tommy Lloyd to you're dead to me if you don't keep the guy who just got us back to the Final Four. Um, but just having that I'm trying to think of the word, but just having that support from the fans, that put Arizona that from you probably have to keep Tommy Lloyd. You definitely have to keep Tommy Lloyd. You got to find a way to get it done, and that got all the way up to President Garamella, from what it sounds. I mean, obviously it did because Tommy reports directly to him now. So that could have been, and I hate to use this hyperbole. Usually I leave that to you, Eric, but the win over Purdue could have been a program altering win, not just for this season, but for seasons to come. There is, I think, certainly there was a better chance that Tommy Lloyd would have left if Arizona hadn't won that game for multiple reasons. Crazy
I
to
think
say, but I think that's true.
I think there would have been, and I told you I was scared after the Arkansas, or I was not scared, but I was concerned that if Arizona had lost to Purdue, that things could be. Now, I didn't have any inside intel at that point,
Yeah.
and based on what's been reported,
Hmm.
you are not overemphasizing that enough. Now, do you believe that Tommy Lloyd's talks last week and all this stuff was a distraction that contributed to Arizona's downfall on Saturday night? Because I don't.
No, it might have been a little bit, but again, I would submit that the pressure of trying to be the first Arizona team to get to the Final Four in 25 years was probably a bigger distraction all season long than just what they've dealt with in the last week. I remember it was a couple of months ago, Raleigh Alkins stopped by U of A practice and talked to the team and talked about how he wants them to be the team to get them back to the Final Four. That was great. It was great to get that support from Raleigh, and he's a proud alum, and I think very highly of Raleigh Alkins. But then I thought, I'm just going to put more pressure on these guys when you tell them stuff like that. So they were able to navigate that. So no, I don't think so. I don't think. I mean, first of all, I mean the situation was resolved going into the game, and then also just logistically, even if Tommy Lloyd had left for North Carolina, a lot of these guys are going to be on their way out anyway. So
And
I
that's it.
yeah,
That's it right there. I mean, how many of these guys are coming back?
yeah.
All right. So Bradley's gone, Burry's is gone, Koa Pete's gone, Del Orso's gone, uh,
Toby Awaka.
Aristode's Awaka's gone, and Aristode's probably going to transfer. The only two that are most likely to come back are Mo Krivas and Ivan Karchenkov.
You think Aristode's
And
going to transfer?
oh yeah, that's by all accounts. I mean, for the lack of playing time that he got, I
No,
mean,
I mean he was injured
he's
for about a year, and I think he would
well,
you
about a month,
you
yeah,
could be
month, yeah.
right, but
I would
I
be
hope he
I'd be
I hope
very
he does.
surprised,
Okay.
very surprised if he was back.
Yeah, I think, well,
So
Jaden Tobe and Del Orso are all gone just because of eligibility. Braden Burries is, you have to believe he's going to be a top 10 pick. Koa Pete, almost certainly, I think. Not a lock, but probably. And then the toss-ups, I think, would be Ivan Karchenkov and Mo Krivas as far as the top eight from this team. And then we'll have to see about Dwayne Aristode.
yeah, I can't picture Aristode coming back. I think Krivas and Karchenkov, I would say probably slightly more likely than not to come back. They may test the waters. I
Yeah.
don't know if they're first round picks. Karchenkov, definitely not. Uh, Krivas maybe at the back end, but I think both would be well suited to come back. You have Caleb Holt coming in. You got Shielstad, the guard from Oregon, that is rumored to come to Arizona. They got to get power forward. They got to go get a bench. So yeah, it was this team next year. ESPN put out their I guess their initial rankings and had Arizona at 5 going into next year. Nah, who knows? Because you don't know what
Yeah.
the teams are
Who
going to look like.
knows?
So it's hard to buy into those. But nonetheless, it was I think it was a great group of that they had. I think they need more depth. I think we saw the problem when Aristotle was down and Koa Pete was down. Now, CD Gay is going to have a bigger role next year. Will Bryce James have a bigger role?
Yeah.
Cam Holmes is there, coming in the freshman. So, but it'll be interesting. Tommy's got the money now. Tommy has the security here, with that extension. I mean, Arizona basketball is in really freaking good hands for
Yeah.
the long haul. And I would be surprised if Arizona was not in another Final Four within 5 years.
I would agree with that at this point. And the other thing is, you just look at what Arizona's done in the 2 years in the Big 12, and I think that's been a great leap for them. As much as I still am sad about the demise of the Pac-12 as we knew it, for men's basketball, the Big 12 has been fantastic because I think even last year, Arizona, I think, was playing like a top 10 team going to the NCAA tournament. They had to play top seeded Duke in the Sweet 16 because they struggled earlier in the year. But I think they were playing really well. And I think having to compete in the Big 12 night after night was a big reason for that. But you think about it, they're what, 30-8 in 2 years in the Big 12 and just in conference play, a regular season title, two conference tournament championship game appearances, and a tournament championship, two Sweet 16s, and now a Final Four. In just those 2 years, remarkable. And I think that as long as the Big 12 continues to be as good as it has been, and there's no reason at this point to think that it won't be, Arizona is going to continue to be as prepared as possible for the NCAA tournament. And I think other Big 12 teams would have made it further, like Iowa State, BYU, Texas Tech, if they had not suffered late season injuries.
Major injuries, right.
Yeah, Arizona was fortunate in that regard.
Shane, I promise you, I promise I will never, ever question Tommy's scheduling again, ever. I've done that twice in the last 3 years. I will never do it again. I mean, I know they have the Maui next year. They have UConn at home. I know they open the season against UCLA in Las Vegas.
Right.
Who knows? It's, I will never question it again. This team was prepared. They just ran into a buzzsaw.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Yep.
If Michigan and Arizona played 10 times, how many does Arizona, on a neutral floor, how many does Arizona win?
Well, it just depends on the timing. I mean, if with Michigan being as hot and cold, Arizona would probably win. Well, even based on what we saw Saturday night, they'd probably find a way to win two or three of them because, again, Michigan had those peaks and valleys, but Michigan was just better. At their best, the way they were playing in non-conference and the way they were playing in the tournament, Michigan would beat them 9 times out of 10. The way they played that stretch against Penn State and Wisconsin and the Big Ten tournament, Arizona probably would have beaten them more often than not. But Arizona caught the good Michigan in the Final Four, of course.
I believe that Arizona would have beaten Illinois in the championship game by 10 points or more. And I believe that Arizona, after watching UConn, the way UConn played Illinois, I mean, that would have been a competitive game like the first matchup.
Yeah.
I believe Arizona would have won. I think the Wildcats were the second best team, and they just ran into whatever it was. Yeah. And of course, it was predictable for UConn to have for Michigan to have kind of a letdown after playing that well on Saturday night. I'm glad on Sportsline I gave out the under in this game because in title games we've seen that I believe 8 of the last 10 times. They're now 9 out of 11.
Oh.
And this game never came close to going over.
Yeah.
Because defensively both teams locked down was what it was. Nonetheless, I am excited about the future of this program, but I'm most sad tonight about you saw how I watched the games in the tournament, with a large group, Shane. You saw that. And that's what I loved about this season is that we were all on board. People that I probably have rarely watched basketball games with in 20 years came to the sports bar to watch games. And we all had that together. And meeting random people. At this part, we met, a minor celebrity, we'll say, who was at the bar and sitting at our table. And it was a very nice person and very cool. But those are people we met because Arizona was on in the Final Four.
Yeah.
And we don't have that for 5 months now.
Yeah.
We don't have anything that we're going to watch all together. And that's kind of a bummer. I really miss that.
I agree. Well, just the branding. I mean, the Arizona's brand was never hotter than it was during that run, and especially with like LeBron James congratulating the team on getting to the Final Four. Obviously, because his son Bryce is on the team, but just from LeBron James and of course Rob Gronkowski, and just like the brand has always been strong, and now we actually have the resume to go with it. I mean, Arizona's been a good team for a lot of years in the regular season, but not so much in March, and to finally be able to play a game in April, the fact that they were able to do that makes it more likely they'll be able to do it again much sooner than 25 years from now.
So let us hope that we don't have to wait 25 years.
If we're doing this podcast in 2051 and we're saying finally another final, that's
no, this team will be back within 5 years. My last point on this, I think Tommy Lloyd learned a lot. And I think,
sure.
Like Dusty May, when he took Florida Atlantic to the Final Four, he learned what that experience was about.
Yeah.
And Dan Hurley is the best coach in the country. I'd probably say Dusty May right now is probably number 2. And Tommy Lloyd's definitely well inside the top 10. You can argue the top 5.
Yeah.
And as far as today's coaching, probably inside the top 5. We're very lucky. It's been an amazing run. I know there's been some drama off the court that's passed us for the most part. We're going to enjoy it. We'll have, I'm sure, plenty of basketball guests over the coming weeks to talk, past, present, and future Arizona basketball. But one thing I want to say before, we move on. I saw a picture. I don't know if you saw this. I think Damon Stoudemire posted it on Instagram, Shane. Did you see that picture?
No.
It was a picture of it was him, Derek Williams, Salim Stoudemire, Andre Iguodala, Miles Simon, and Josh Pastner all together and I'm texting it to you right now as we do this show, just so you can see this. That is what Arizona basketball is all about. You had different generations of players getting together and celebrating in Indy. And I'm bummed that we weren't there. And I hope those of you who were there had a freaking blast. I know the game wasn't great, but I got pictures from friends. Incredible. I hope the next time we can go. Maybe not together because you and I might
we'll sit on opposite sides of the stadium. No,
but
that's awesome.
How cool is that?
Yeah. It's a brotherhood. And I love that. I think it's just a reminder of why we love college sports so much. One of the things I randomly remember is, you remember the football game between Michigan and Michigan State where Michigan botched the punt and Michigan State ran it back at the end. And Le'Veon Bell posted this video on social media just of himself going crazy because he's a Michigan State alum. And it's like, he wasn't playing in that game, but he just loved it so much because it's like the school is in his blood. And that's how it is, with former football, basketball, whatever the sport is. It's like they're, and that's a nice thing about not bouncing around from school to school like you can these days, is you stay the whole time. And you get entrenched into the culture, and it's like you're as passionate about the program 10, 20, 30 years from now as you were when you were playing. And that's us too. I mean, it's been a minute since we were in college, and we were still living and dying with every game. So that's an awesome photo. I'm glad you shared it.
As always, this podcast is very fortunate to be sponsored by Harrah's Auction Casino, and they have the new Caesars Sports Bar. Hey, Wildcat fans, your new home turf for all things sports is the Caesars Sports Bar, now open at Harrah's Auction Casino, bringing big-time sportsbook energy and all your favorite game day grub under one roof. And at your local home for Caesars Rewards, it pays to play. Caesars Rewards unlocks perks at more than 50 destinations from coast to coast. At the all-new Caesars Sports Bar, it's always game time. Caesars Rewards plus Caesars Sports Bar, now that is a winning play. But you'll only find this much action at Harrah's Auction Casino. Play for all. And we say it every week, but Shane and I were out there on Selection Sunday when I told you that Arizona would meet Michigan in the Final Four. And I did tell you that Connecticut would make the Final Four, so I got 3 out of 4.
You did.
I did. So I did not win the pool, any pool that I was in, but nonetheless, it was fun, and we had a hell of a run. Let's talk about a few more things after we hear from Caesars Sports Bar and Harrah's Auction Casino.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for all at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
All right, just a couple things I want to touch on here that are related to college sports. Hey, listen, we got 5 months of content to fill, Shane. We'll find ways. We always do.
Oh, we always do. We always have some awesome guests in the offseason. That's usually when you can get more of them anyway. So, yeah.
We're going to have some surprise guests. I will say that have never been on this show before, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'll say that. Okay. Yep. So there was an executive order that was signed regulating college sports. Now, I don't know if it's actually going to be signed into law, but basically players would have 5 years to complete their eligibility, 5 years to play 5, and get 1 free transfer if this were allowed. Now, I assume it'll be in so many courts that it probably won't. But what do you think of that rule, Shane?
The rule itself, I love. Yeah, the enforcement process. I mean, I think it's a positive step and one that I agree with. I think it's common sense. Although I think it's a little bizarre to see the president step in on something like this.
Yeah, really.
I mean, I'm glad he's taking an interest. Of course, there's going to be some people who they would be for it if it was signed into law by anyone else other than Donald Trump. But it is what it is. And there's definitely going to be some legal challenges. But yeah, it's a positive thing. I think it's absolutely crazy for players to be bouncing around. One thing I'm not sure about is, do you have another possible opportunity to transfer right away if you have a coach who leads the program? Okay, I think that should be in there. I think that's more than fair. But yeah, one freebie. Enough of this. Bouncing around. 5 or even 6 times. It's ridiculous. It provides no stability. People don't honor their NIL deals. I'm glad that athletes are having the ability to make money off of their name, image, and likeness and move around a little bit more. But even like we talked about, even in pro sports, it's like you have to honor a contract, and you become a free agent at a certain point. You don't become a free agent in pro sports every year, so there has to be some stability, and hopefully this at least gives the NCAA the kick in the pants it needs. And it was interesting to see all the major conferences come out in support of the legislation as well.
It's so logical, Shane. Yeah. And I'll tell you what this should have been done years ago. I don't think it will happen. I really don't think it'll go through, but hopefully at some point we got to stop with the guys playing at 4 schools and and having 9 years to play. You get 5 years. Yeah. If you get hurt, too bad. It's unfortunate, but go get an adult job at that point.
Yeah. Well, and the corruption, it just stinks to high heaven. Was it Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss who he had several appeals to try to play 1 more year, and finally he finds a judge who's friendly to Ole Miss and is a donor to them, said, sure, go ahead and play another. It's like, are we really doing this? It's ridiculous. So at some point this has got to stop, and hopefully this at least gets the ball rolling.
Number 2, just want to touch on this fast, Shane. NCAA leadership is expected to finalize an expansion of the men's and women's tournaments to 76 teams in the next few weeks. I'm sure we'll talk about this more.
Yeah.
I think it is a disaster.
Yeah. I'll echo what Zach Shoemaker noted on X a couple days ago. All of this is a way to reward average teams from big markets so networks can sell more advertising. That's all it is. And he's absolutely right. The tournament's too crowded as it is. I think, if nothing else, I'd like just to go back to 64 teams if I could. And I feel like the top 8, I'd be open to the top 8 teams or 16 teams to get a first round bye. But 64, it's fine. But we knew this was coming. The other thing is, it's like that bracket, that even with the 68 teams, that bracket is kind of iconic looking. It's like you saw in the Final Four, the projection of the bracket on the hotel, which looked amazing. And now you're going to screw that up too. So from a branding standpoint, I think it's dumb as well. But look, we knew this was coming at some point. Momentum for this had been building for years, and this was the inevitable conclusion. It probably won't be the last time it's expanded either. But
Shane, come on. There are not 76 teams that are worthy of making this thing.
No. I would say there's not 64 teams worthy of making it, but that's part of the excitement, and I'm okay with that.
But see, we need more of the Miami of Ohio if you're going to expand it, teams that really crush it in their regular seasons, in their respective smaller conferences, instead of these, Auburn. And I know Auburn won the NIT, but we don't need to see those They weren't good enough in a bigger conference. The teams that dominate smaller conferences, give them a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, Miami got lost, but at least they won that play-in game, and it was pretty awesome when they beat who was it? Why am I blanking here? Texas beat NC State, and Miami beat SMU, who had no
That's
business. That was another team that had
I know
no
it was a
business being
Texas
in.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just stupid that we're going to 76. What are we doing, NCAA? Come on.
Yeah, the two things I would do is I'd go back to 64, and then speaking of the Miami Ohio situation, I would give an automatic tournament bid to the regular season champion at each conference. I mean, you want to play a conference tournament, fine, but it would be Miami Ohio almost missed the NCAA tournament because they lost one game. If they had lost one other game of the regular season, they probably would have missed it. It's like, why do you play the regular season and go undefeated in your conference, and you have one slip up?
You're right.
In the semifinal or the championship game, and then you're out. That tells you the only reason you play conference games is for NCAA or conference tournament seeding. That's the only reason, and I think that's ridiculous.
Make the regular season worth more. I've said this a lot on this show, and I'm going to say it one more time. The women's tournament has it right. There should be pods where the top 16 teams or top 8 teams, whatever it is, host regionals on their home floor. Maybe the top 8 host regionals on their home. So Arizona should have hosted 8 teams at McHale Center. How cool would that be?
And I'm not as passionate about that. I would be okay with that, but I do think, to your point, that a lot of times the first round of the tournament, the NCAA tournament, could actually be a home court disadvantage for top teams, because if it's a close game late, all the fans from all the other teams there are going to root against you because they want to see the big upset, because they want to root for the
women don't have that problem. It's very rare that happens. This should be a no-brainer to schedule these random places where we have to, well, Arizona's going to go to San Diego. Like, is that really necessary? Just have it in Tucson. You'll sell out the joint. I mean,
yeah,
I don't understand. And stop playing the championship game in a stupid dome in an NFL stadium. I know why they do it, for money, but I saw views of people, and I'm sure some of you watching saw, sat higher up or listening to us. Hey, good for you. I've done it at a at this type of event. It's not my favorite thing.
I'd rather watch it at a sports bar with other fans than sit at 300 level and have to use binoculars or watch the Jumbotron the whole time. I mean, if you're there for the whole experience and fan fest and stuff like that, I get it. But for the game itself, I'd rather watch on a big screen.
I will say this finally, once again. Thank you all for hanging with us during basketball season. We'll have a lot of great content as we go along. It has been an incredible time from the start of football season to now. What is that? More than 7 months of just every week getting excited. I mean, we've had a hell of a run. Arizona's football and basketball teams combined went, let me do the math here, 45-7. I mean, that is, it'll never get better than that, probably.
And you and I were together for 4 of those games combined, and how many of those did they win?
Shane, don't talk about that.
I'm just saying.
I mean, they lost to 3 really good teams.
0-4.
You and I need what was the fourth one?
BYU, SMU, Texas Tech, and then
that's right.
And
all right, Shane and I are no longer allowed to get together to watch games. At least we're not going to do it next year. It's not happening.
Nope.
Okay, there it is. Sorry if we jinxed anyone. I don't think it really made a difference, but we will not.
No, it just sucks. That's all. It just sucks.
Yeah, we just won't watch games with each other. All right. Great show as always. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening, and as always, bear down.